Yeah. I hadn't recorded that. Fuck's sakes.
When did you want to start? Are you doing an intro or just like?
I normally kind of just get into it,
Okay.
but yeah. Thank you for coming down. Really appreciate it.
I've been excited to come down.
Yeah. Like I was saying, what kind of a role does ego play in developing a fighter and making that fighter go from good to great to one of the GOATs?
So there's that. I think pretty much every jiu-jitsu gym I've ever been to has had like the sign on the door that says.
Come a bit further in.
There you go. Every jiu-jitsu gym I've been to, pretty much has a sign on the door that says, leave your ego at the door. Except ego's what's gonna make you want to win. Like the amount of times early days I'd get submitted, or even now if I get submitted, I'm like, well, that's never happening again. That's my ego talking. That's my ego saying, no, I refuse to lose. I'll fix this. I'll come back better. Someone who hasn't got that isn't someone who wants to succeed. And that's the driving force of everything. Like if you any adversity you face, it's your ego that says that's never going to happen again, and you want to come back better.
Yeah.
The only problem I think that we can maybe confuse the word ego for being just a douchebag. Like you can keep you can have your ego and you can want to succeed and everything like that. But if you are then someone who just like wants to act like an asshole to people, then people, oh yeah, his ego's getting in the way. No, it's not. Like he's just a bad person, or she's just a bad person.
So it's more about harnessing your ego for the greater good, or for your own good.
Your greater good. Yeah, you want to. I mean, we have fulfillment in our lives. Especially if you are a sports person, an athlete, or someone who wants to succeed in career. It's your ego that what drives you. It's interesting. Like you talk about MMA. The likes of Paulo Costa and John Jones and Conor and people like that. They'll say stuff like, like John used to say, I used to get wrecked like the night before a fight. Like used to get like blackout drunk. Like when Paulo Costa lost to Izzy, he said he like downed bottles of wine the night before. And you think, they're obviously not stupid people. Like this is your biggest fight of your life. It's happening tomorrow.
Yeah.
And you're downing bottles of wine or like cocaine or whatever. And you think, why would you risk it? And it's because they're trying to create a backdoor for their ego. Because if they fail and they are peak condition, completely sober, everything like that, they lost. That's going to hurt their ego.
Yeah.
Yeah, if they can turn around and go, actually, no, I was drunk. I was, I'd stayed up all night partying or something like that before the fight. That's why I lost. Like Conor was like pretty good at it. Like, he'd say like before what I think there was at the Khabib fight or something, like he'd hurt his foot or whatever. And they come into the fight injured. Oh no, it's my foot that caused the issue. Or John's another example, someone who get out, completely drunk. I mean, I know this for example, like when I used to compete a lot when I was younger, when I became better, like purple belt, brown belt, I'd enter open weight divisions and open belt divisions. So like even as
so open weight is any weight categories, right?
Yeah. So as in, talking a few years ago, some competitions you wouldn't have many people at upper levels competing, and so if you wanted to fight, you'd have to maybe make some adjustments, shall we say. So I remember fighting as a purple belt, like 82 kilos, 83 kilos, at like 100 kilo black belts. And
Shit.
When you think at that point, my ego's at the level where it's giving me a backdoor. If I win, I just beat a bunch of 100 kilo black belts. If I lose, well, I'm an 80 kilo purple belt fighting 100 kilo black belts. What do you expect? Like, it kind of gives you that kind of underdog feeling. And I did win a couple of times, and I hold on to those. And the amount of times I hear that of other people, like they would purposely just fight bigger dogs or get out drunk and stuff like that. It's amazing how many of these little weird coping mechanisms you create to try and like justify loss to yourself.
Yeah. Do you think people do that in life as well then?
I think so. Yeah, I think it's easy to. I think when you're settled into a job or something like that, it's easy to kind of coast, and you're not going to. Your ego's not going to affect it too much. But when you start maybe pushing yourself further and you start to become more visible, I think is the moment. Like if it's just you and no one cares, your ego's in check. But it's when you are visible to other people, then you're more likely to start doing daft stuff to try and give yourself an out when you lose in front of people and go, well, why did that happen? Well, this, and oh, okay, that's why you lost. Yeah, but you can't do it to yourself.
Okay. How long have you been training for? So, how old were you when you first started? Was it Jiu-Jitsu or Brazilian Jujitsu that you started first?
So I started. So I'm actually from Stafford. I started karate jitsu in Longton when I was. That would have been end of 2000. So I would have been about 13 years old. Run by a guy, I think his name's Kevin O'Connor. And it was a cold, dank, normal martial arts gym. And then it turned out the following year, so it would have been the beginning of 2001, it turned out that one of my friends was going to a traditional Japanese Jiu-Jitsu gym that happened to be 200 yards away from my house. So instead of traveling 40 minutes to go to Longton, it was a 10-minute walk, if that, to a Jiu-Jitsu gym. And so I was like, oh, okay, sack that off. I'll go to this place. And I started a place called Keshiru Jiu-Jitsu. March 2001, and trained there. It was traditional Japanese, so it was like a mixture of compliant judo mixed with karate. Did that up until got my brown belt in that in 2003, and then I would have just been leaving high school that summer, and I was badly beaten up, like terribly battered, mugged. Broad daylight on the way home one day, like completely caved in half my face. I still can't breathe out of half my nose, and that messed me up. I couldn't go outside for the longest time, and it made me then like want to learn more violent martial arts. So I took up Thai boxing soon after that. And I still had I still watched a lot of Bruce Lee and played Tekken and stuff. So I thought Kung Fu would work. So I took up like Lao Gar and Wing Chun. But when you are doing Thai boxing and you've got adults like kicking your legs in, and then you go to Kung Fu and you're just standing in the middle of a leisure center just punching the air, you're like, oh, this is very different. So I kind of didn't carry on with those, and I stuck with the Thai boxing and the Japanese Jiu-Jitsu. Got my black belt in that I left for a bit because I hurt my shin Thai boxing. I cracked my shin, so I left martial arts 2004, 2005.
Completely?
Yeah, stopped. Became grossly overweight. I was living off just chocolate bars, KFC, pizza. I was working in an office. I was a search engine optimizer, and I would have like KFC for lunch and a pizza for dinner, and just eat like 8 chocolate bars a day and drink 2 liters of Coke. I was massive. Going to like just music gigs.
How old were you?
So 2005, I would have been about 18 years old. Then that kind of stayed up until around about early 2007. I was like, I'm going to die if I keep doing this. I'm barely 20.
What made you realize that?
The mirror. And then like, I think you get into this kind of rut, and then you just don't break out of it. And then I broke up with my then partner, and I had loads of free time, so I thought, right, I'm going to fix myself. So I went back to Japanese Jiu-Jitsu as a brown white belt. I was like, right, I want to get my black belt finally. Went back to Thai boxing as well. Got my black belt in Japanese Jiu-Jitsu in April 2008. Opened up a Japanese Jiu-Jitsu school in Stafford. I was like in my early 20s. And then beginning of 2009.
Sorry, was that Fighting Fit?
No. This is an offshoot of Keshiru. It was like a satellite gym. So still like, teaching a syllabus, teaching punching in the air and compliant judo, and still pretty hard throws and everything. That you'd still bounce off the floor, but it wasn't necessarily as heavy sparring. Then around about end of February 2009, went through another breakup, had loads of free time suddenly come up, and I thought, I'm a black belt in Japanese Jiu-Jitsu, still had this idea that I knew how to fight. So I entered a judo newaza competition, like ground fighting. And, we did a little bit of ground fighting in Japanese Jiu-Jitsu. I thought, I'm a black belt. I'll muller these people. I heard legends of this gym called Fighting Fit, of like savages. And I was like, I'm going to try this place out. And that was, I think, the 3rd of March or something, 2009. So I walked in, cocky, early 20s, finally got in shape, thought I was in shape. Went to this submission grappling gym, Fighting Fit, and that first night my coach put me in hospital. Like he messed me up pretty bad. Like I thought he'd snap my neck or something. I was like, oh, good God. And I'd already entered into this judo newaza competition. It was about 3 weeks away.
Yeah.
And I realized I didn't know actually how to like ground fight to any decent level.
Yeah.
And so I had 3 lessons at Fighting Fit, then entered this judo newaza competition. And it was against BJJ blue belts. At this point, I'd heard of BJJ. I didn't know it's called Brazilian Jujitsu. I thought it stood for blowjob job. And so when I saw it mentioned online, I thought it was like some sort of weird, like people say, oh, you having some of that BJJ? And I'm like, blowjob job? Like, that sounds so weird. And so I didn't know much about. I thought because
it's really unfortunate acronym.
It is when you don't really know much about. I mean, now obviously people do, but my cousins would watch the UFC, but I thought it was just like WWE. I thought it was fake, and blowjob job. And so I went to this judo newaza competition. That's 3 days worth of actual sparring experience.
Yeah.
No fitness. And I was against blue belts and purple belts and a judo black belt, and I got the shit kicked out of me. Like, so bad. Like, they just fucked me up. I was like, I remember being in the bathroom, like, practically crying, just like my face was smashed in, and like I was just wrecked. And I was like, oh, good God.
Wait, is that striking allowed in these competitions?
No. It was, but like the gi burn across my face, and they'd like really like.
I still haven't done any gi work yet, so I don't know what that's like.
This was very new to me, and it was also like I'd never felt that level of aggression because it was straight into competition. I was like, this hurts, and I had no cardio. Like at this point, I couldn't run more than like 200 meters without gassing. Like I'd never done long distance. I joined the gym soon after that, and I remember putting like 10 kilo on either side of a barbell and dropping it on my chest, trying to do a bench press, and like some dude just like coming over with one hand and like lifting this barbell off me because I'm just there like dying underneath it. I was like, I'm not fit in the slightest. I've lost some weight, but I'm not fit. I have no cardio. I have no strength, and I've just decided to enter a competition and just got the shit kicked out of me. There's a lot I need to fix right now. So I bought a load of books. This is like what YouTube had been out for like 2 years at this point, so there wasn't much jiu-jitsu content, if any, on YouTube. There was like early submissions 101, like Eddie Bravo's kind of style. And so I just read a lot, and the style of Fighting Fit at the time was submission wrestling, and it was just warehouse fighting. It was like if you wanted to pass the guard, you just neck crank the other person till they let go of their legs. There was no like Del Heaver or like single leg X. If you stood up, you both stood up and started wrestling like men again, that kind of thing.
Okay.
And it was just savagery more than anything else. My coach would put a a bin in the middle of the room, and we'd be like, right, when you want to throw up, it's there, just so you don't have to leave the mats. And so you'd be there like chucking up in the gym in the bin, and then straight back into the next roll and stuff like that. Or like you do stuff like called Animal Day, where you would no submissions allowed, and you weren't allowed to hold a position for more than 2 seconds, and you just had to batter the other person in until they just gave up. So you get them out and just bounce their head off the floor and then move somewhere else and just like knee them in the chest repeatedly with like knee on belly, and you just want to hurt them. And it was just blood everywhere at that point. And I was like, this is amazing. Like, these guys do not care. Like, one thing about, when you're in the winter at Fighting Fit, like you go outside and it's warmer. Like you come down the stairs and it's warmer outside than it is inside. I think it's just because it's God's blind spot. Like, in a horror movie,
yeah,
like when there's evil present, and like the air gets a chill. That's Fighting Fit.
I've noticed that downstairs, it's like you said, it's warmer outside than it is inside sometimes.
Well, have you been to our Stone Gym or just a Stafford Gym?
It's just a Stafford one I've been to so far.
The Stone Gym, that's the hellscape. That's the it's at the top of like a disused factory. There's posters up that of Holyfield versus Tyson. What's that? Like 96. It's an old Rocky style gym.
Okay.
Like there used to be a canvas in the boxing ring. Just it looked like a Jackson Pollock painting, just blood everywhere, and like it'd never been clean and stuff. If you rolled in the ring, you were coming out of ringworm, guaranteed. Like you knew if someone had ringworm, like, oh, you've rolled in the ring today, haven't you? Yes, you have. But that was Fighting Fit, and it had this reputation for a reason, just because these guys didn't really know like technique. They just had horrible training practices. Like you come up, it's 3 stories up, and you'd arrive, and Stocky would be there with like a sledgehammer or a bike chain, and he'd hand you it and go, right, no one else is here yet. You're going to do stair runs till they arrive. And you'd just be carrying hammers up and down the stairs constantly. And like your legs would be like dying, and like with a bike chain around your neck. You can't do that kind of, like when I took over. So he had a accident, like a bike accident, late 2009. So the gym was like left to me. I was saying to you just before we started, like the gym owner basically said, like, you're the least stupid person really in the room, and you have a kind of recently read books. You just look after it until they come back, when they're fixed. And that was 2009, and they haven't come back yet. And so I kind of carried on those same training practices, and then you realize no one stayed. Like only nutters would stay. But when you have someone who's, maybe who wants to get into jiu-jitsu, interested in combat sports, and then the first time they walk in, you just like literally put a sledgehammer in their hand and go, right, start running, fatty. And like then they're there like chucking up on the stairs, and then they never come back. And you're like, oh, this isn't conducive to growing an effective team.
Yeah, for me, I think the first time I came with one of my managers from my previous company, Simon Holbrook.
Yes, he's still with us.
Yeah. He's the one. Yeah, I mean, to be fair, just like you said, just like how you got into it, I'd just gone through a breakup, and suddenly there's a lot of free time on my hands, and I'd got quite fat at that point as well, and I kind of went on this insane fitness journey where I was going gym like 5-6 days a week, cycling every day, and then I've always been interested in jiu-jitsu, and I think it was by pure chance I was just looking it up, and then I was just talking about it at work, and then he said, oh, we've got one here, why didn't you come? When I came, and then I remember immediately getting choked out, like within like less than 5 minutes of me being on the mats.
Was that Simon who did it or someone else?
It might have been, I think it was Simon the first time.
Yeah, that sounds about right, because normally most people will look after you. Simon wouldn't. Like Simon wouldn't care.
I mean, it was good in a way because it kind of showed me what I was getting into. And then obviously I injured my knee and I was out for like 2 years.
Yeah, of course. It does end. it's trying to find that balance of like convincing people that this thing is legit and it works and it's fun and it's going to be hard work for you, but at the same time not breaking you. Like,
Yeah.
it's that fine balance, and we've definitely swung in both directions over the years.
I mean, to be fair, I did it to myself because I'd got super obsessed with it, and I was literally, I'd come back from work, watch YouTube videos on this, and then come into training. And I think I just did a leg lock on someone else, and I did not do it right, and I hyperextended my knee and tore my meniscus. Which,
yeah, I'd say, like, you know, usually when people start, I say to them, like, it's very, very rare you actually get injured by someone putting you in a submission, unless, actually, no, it is exceptionally rare. The only time I ever really see people get injured through being stuck in submissions is when your ego won't let you tap. And then you're like, no, I can hold on. All of a sudden, just like something pops. You're like, oh, wait, no, that didn't work. For someone to actually then go out and maliciously hurt someone else, I don't think I've really ever seen it. Like, maybe once or twice in 14 years. But out of the thousands of hours I've put in on the mats, it's very rare. It's more likely you'll have someone try and survive longer through a submission and then it go wrong for them. That's happened a lot. That's happened to me a lot because I'm an idiot. But the vast majority of injuries is just accidents. When you have two fully grown adults going at each other at full tilt, things happen. It did make me think once, like a good friend of mine from Norway used to be like almost a pro footballer. And he said that, you know, football's a lot scarier sometimes than you imagine, because when you're running full tilt and then some dude just runs in with his legs and chops you down, it's the fact that you're not expecting it that does the most damage. Like, you're not braced for the damage to come in, and that's what causes it. And when you have, like, you know, two fully grown adults just running each other down, things happen. And in jiu-jitsu, you have two fully grown adults throwing each other around. You can just land wrong, break a finger, or just like get a knock to the face, like an errant elbow. Like, anyone ever says that jiu-jitsu is not a striking art has never rolled with a white belt. Like, the amount of times I get punched in the face, like, just, and, you know, something that comes flying out and I get a black eye or something.
yeah. I mean, that's pretty much what happened a couple of months ago when I broke my rib, got kneed in the chest, and that was completely accidental as well.
Exactly. No one really goes out to hurt another person. Like, okay, no one goes out to injure another person. We go to hurt them. Like, I want to make you suffer, but I don't want you to be, like, injured afterwards. I just want you to be in pain at that moment in time. And it's actually interesting. So I get to travel around the world doing this an awful lot. And one thing I've noticed over the years is it's very much like a dance, as in, when you roll with someone, if they roll like a douchebag, you don't want to know that person as a friend afterwards, really. Like, you know, say if we've never really met before, it's like, hey, you know, nice to meet you, I'm Chris, let's roll. And you start sparring, and it's fun, it's friendly, you know, it's competitive, and you're having a good time. You know, 5 minutes passes, we're best friends now, let's go for dinner. But if you roll with someone and they hurt you, like actually try and hurt you, and they roll clumsy or something, and they're like hitting you in the face a lot, and you're not enjoying the roll, afterwards, like, yeah, they might be the nicest person in the world, but it's that kind of like chemistry of like a dance. Then you walk off, and you're like, you know, screw that person, I don't really want to know him.
Yeah. What's it like going abroad and doing training and classes?
People will always try and show how good their gym is, and so if you really want to, like, know how far you are going in jiu-jitsu, just go to another gym, because people will try and, like, prove their jiu-jitsu that their gym is better, because it's almost like a group ego at that point. Like, we've got the good jiu-jitsu here, like, hurt the new guy. And that's a lot of fun. But even like, so the Globetrotters camps I do, which is essentially just then, like, you know, 250 people from all over the world in a random gym somewhere and wherever. even if you don't know the same language, or there's a definite language barrier or whatever, you have that universal handshake. You slap hands, you bump knuckles, and you go. And then even afterwards, like the language barrier remains, but you're already friends if that role or that chemistry was there. And it then becomes quite painful in that you meet all these people, and you Jiu-Jitsu requires quite a lot of trust in that, essentially a win for the other person is them putting you in a situation where they could either mutilate or kill you. Like if you get me in a choke, you're stopping blood going to my brain. After 6 seconds, I'm going to black out if I don't tap. After those 6 seconds have passed, I am defenseless. If you carry on choking me, I will die. You're hanging me, essentially. And so if you're not looking after me at that point in time, I could be tapping and you could just hold on and I'll go out. Or even if I don't tap because my ego's messing with me and I do go out and you don't notice and you just think, screw this guy's not tapping, I'll squeeze harder. You could end up killing me, even by accident. Or if you go for a submission and you slap it on a bit too fast or whatever, you're going to break my arm, you're going to break my leg, my ankle, my wrist, or something. And so the simple fact that we're going to enter a game with each other, someone who I don't know, and there is a legitimate chance they could hospitalize me or even kill me if this goes sideways, that requires an awful lot of trust to put into another human being straight off the bat, which is why I think it creates this amazing friendship afterwards, even purely by accident. Like, oh my God, I trust you, you didn't hurt me. Which then meeting loads of these different people around the world, and you build up that kind of really strong trust with them instantly. It means it's quite painful because you have friends dotted everywhere, and like you just want to see them all, and so you realize that there isn't enough time to go maintain all these fun friendships you want to have. Like I love it. Every time I go to a camp and like there's people there who I've met through previous camps, we pretty much just jump on each other. Like I haven't seen them in like a year, and we only spent a week together, but it's my best friend all of a sudden, and like it's quite interesting the fact that jiu-jitsu can do that to someone. Like it's quite unique, I think, in that way.
Is it because as a sport it's fairly intimate because you are pretty much up in each other's face, and also like you said, there is a lot of trust between the two people who are fighting with each other?
I think that's one thing we found out from COVID is, we obviously had to put an end to training, distancing, etc. And we didn't realize, or I didn't realize, how much we all missed that kind of close physical play with another human being. And I think it's one of the things that we're not kind of used to, is that you have a partner and you're intimate with your partner, but you don't really have a kind of social, physical interactions with other human beings. Like you think, as a human, if you on an average day, week, whatever, if you have kids, okay, you hug your kids. If you have a partner, you hug your partner. If you have family members, you hug your family members. But just general physical social interaction with other human beings, you maybe shake people's hands, bump their shoulders or something. It's very lonely in the world. Like we don't really physically interact. We don't physically play. Like, we kick a ball around or something, or, all our games are quite far apart. And it's one thing that kind of maybe strikes people when they start jiu-jitsu is that it's very physically close. Like, you want to make sure that you are showered before you go in, because they are going to get really close to you. And I think we do need that as humans. Like, we're primates, and we're one of the probably only primates that doesn't socially interact in that way. And so, we play this game, we basically ride around on the floor and enjoy this, and then we take it away from us because of a global health scare. And it was painful. And then we all came back, and it almost like could bring you to tears, like you'd missed it that much. That first roll was unique, and I don't think we'll ever feel that kind of moment again, like, oh my God, I really needed this. And yeah, I think that does form part of it as well. It's a I refer to the club as a jiu-jitsu club. It's a social club that plays jiu-jitsu, because we're all friends and we have that kind of primate bonding in the way.
Yeah. Do you think there's also, obviously, it's quite a close group of people, and because there's not like hundreds of people, do you think there's also that aspect to it? Because everyone does kind of know each other quite well.
I think it's easier, to get lost in the mix sometimes if it is a massive group, but I don't think jiu-jitsu is at a point where it could be that massive. I don't think many sports are that massive. Like even football, you don't have clubs bigger than whatever else sport you want to think of, 30, 40 people playing together or whatever.
That's a fair point.
And so you do have those like mega clubs like Bajas and stuff like that, which maybe enter 300-400 students or something. But then like every class like might be 30 or 50 people, and you do start to know everyone by name. It was quite important to me to like remember everyone's name. Like it was one of the when I was first coming up as an instructor, a good black belt, Dan Strauss, did say like he makes an effort just to make sure he remembers everyone's name, because it's one of the most important parts for you, your name. Like if someone just looks and goes like, hey bro, every single day, like, oh, that sucks. Like you can use that term affectionately afterwards, but when you start saying, hey Steve, hey what, hey Darren, hey Jill, oh, I matter. I'm like, yeah, you do. And I think that then forms part of the social interactions afterwards. Like everyone then welcomes that person in, and I think mixing with those other things about the trust and the social kind of physical bonding, you do just become good friends. Essentially, you are playing like, I played a lot of PlayStation growing up. We are just playing a PlayStation game. We were sitting there playing a PlayStation game, and if I play a game against my son, I'm not just going to clown my son. I could, I've got like 20 odd years of playing experience under my belt. I could easily just smash him up in Tekken, but it's not fun. I make it difficult for him. But it's a game, and this is a game, and I could easily come in and just like kneel on your head, and then like just shut you down. We're going to play. I'm still going to beat you, but we're going to have a play. And I'm just the guy who played the PlayStation the longest, and I've got ideas on how to win in Tekken. That's essentially it.
Do your kids do jiu-jitsu as well?
I've tried so many times. Like I think it's because I'm their dad, and they don't see me as a teacher at that point. Like they just want to come up and cuddle me. Like the second they get any sort of adversity, like, have a cuddle, dad. I'm like, no, kneel down, do push-ups. Just cuddle. Like, I'll put you in a different club, like where I am not here, because the problem is that you know me. I think that's how anyone who runs a jiu-jitsu club, who then runs a kids class, that's the only way they can get the kids into it, is if they're not there. Like, don't teach your own kids. It doesn't work.
What kind of training do you do? Because obviously we're having to run the camps and the classes and everything. Do you do any kind of training yourself?
As in jiu-jitsu training, or as in like just physical exercise?
Well, both.
Well, jiu-jitsu is very cerebral. I think compared to most sports, like if I was to download American football from Tom Brady into your head, you're not going to be Tom Brady. If I was to download gymnastics out of Simone Biles' head into your head, you're not Simone Biles, because physicality does play a massive part in those sports as well. Obviously, they're great tacticians and stuff like that, but physicality is definitely there. But I think with jiu-jitsu, if I downloaded a black belt into your head, I don't think you'd be that far off being a black belt. You could definitely impose your will, because you don't have to be necessarily very physically strong or flexible or agile or stuff like that. It's a cerebral game. And so I think most of my training just comes down to sparring, and then just being conscious of what the hell I'm doing and trying to figure it out. And so I don't really feel like, drilling and stuff like that. If I have ideas that I want to try out, I'll try on the newest person in the room and then build it back up to the higher levels. But rolling like is the best form of physical exercise for rolling. Like, I want to get better at jiu-jitsu sparring. I'll do more sparring. There's no point me doing jogging to get better at sparring, because I'll jog for an hour at a very slow speed with my legs, and then I'll jump into sparring, and it involves my entire body in different moments of explosive motions. Very different. Like even weightlifting, like, you know, I might be able to push something off my chest, but it'd be in a very controlled, given angle. People aren't that when they're on top of you. I think I used to do gym a lot, like, you know, after I said earlier, like, you know, dropping 40 kilo on my chest. I did train up until the point where I was lifting about 130 bench, which is vastly better than 40. But I haven't been a gym rat now in probably about 5 years. I just can't bear the it's just counting with heavy things, and like, it's so boring. So I rock climb instead. I go bouldering in Stoke.
Okay.
Which, again, I think it's that physical problem solving. It's puzzles with your body, same as jiu-jitsu. Someone sets you a puzzle, and you're going to solve that puzzle with your body.
Yeah.
Same as rock climbing.
So is that how you got into jiu-jitsu, or martial arts? You just found a problem and you wanted to solve it, and effectively, I guess the problem was you getting mugged at the start.
Getting into combat sports was definitely the mugging one, but getting into martial arts was, I just played a lot of Mortal Kombat.
That was it.
As in, I had a Mega Drive as a young kid from, like, you know, I don't know, like age 8, age 9, played Mortal Kombat and Tekken, and like would spend entire summers just sitting inside, just playing Tekken. And then I was like, oh my God, this is cool. And then getting Enter the Dragon and looking at Bruce Lee and going, oh my God, that guy's cool as well. And then trying to find anything involving martial arts. I think I was trying to find a karate school, but my dad wouldn't take me. I was like, right, okay. And I saw this jiu-jitsu school at the back of my house. I was like, right, cool, I'll go here. And to pay for it, I just used to go clean cars and, you know, every week, or like, you know, save up change out of my lunch money, and then, okay, that's it. That's me jiu-jitsu this week. So yeah, as sad as it is, it was just Tekken.
The journey from a white belt to a blue belt to a purple, brown, and then black. What are the kind of trials and tribulations that you go through in those stages? Because you were telling me that the journey from white to blue is a lot longer and maybe harder than it is from going from a brown to a black.
I think everyone has like their different points of view. There's nothing actually codified in what each belt means. Everyone has a rough idea, and like the most general idea is, if you can beat up people at a certain belt, you are that belt. Like if you are a white belt and you're starting to beat up blue belts, well, that's a blue belt. It's basically a way of just like proving that you are of a better level. And over the years, kind of like, it just becomes a general feeling. Like, this is what each belt feels like. I know roughly if I roll someone what kind of belt they are. Like, oh, it's a blue, it's a purple, whatever. But the way I kind of look at it now is that you know the kids film Hercules, Disney film.
Yeah.
And you know the Fates have like a string of life that they like everyone has, and like that's one of the main plot points. Like, spoilers, like cutting the string and stuff. That's how I look at when someone joins jiu-jitsu. They hand me this life string, and it's their journey. Like, this is the journey that I want to take, and it's different thicknesses, different lengths, but it's always the same string. It starts at white and just gets darker. It goes, you know, pale blue, duck egg, blue into magenta, purple, and then darker into brown and black. And so it's never just like a solid color, like fruit pastels. It's actually like, you know, a blend, like a rainbow. But each belt has like a philosophical meaning to me. Like, the white belt is a belt where you no longer move like a human being, you move like a jiu-jitsu person. And it's a belt of defense. Like, I don't like this happening to me. How can I stop it from happening to me? Once you stop bad things happening to you, you can then start exploring and starting to play the techniques of jiu-jitsu. I mean, you can't exactly play the techniques of jiu-jitsu if you're just getting murdered all the time. And so it kind of makes sense that now it's the buffet belt, the blue belt. And by that I mean, like, imagine you go to a wedding and there's a buffet cart, and you're going down the buffet cart and you get to the first item, it's sausage rolls, and you have the sausage rolls, you're like, God damn, these are awesome. And you just load up your plate on sausage rolls. And I'm like, oh, did you try the Scotch eggs? Scotch eggs? No. Like, I like sausage rolls. Like, but you've not tried them. Purple belt is the blueprint of the black belt you will one day be. So you've tried everything on the buffet cart, and now you can go back and go, actually, you know what? I do like sausage rolls more than Scotch eggs, but I also like pork pie. I do like quiche, and those crisps are fantastic, right? And that's the difference between a blue and a purple, is that blues need to get over themselves and they just need to explore everything. They can't form an opinion if they haven't tried everything. Once you've tried everything, that's a purple belt. So if I'm rolling with the blue belt and like they've got a really good A game, they've got really good sausage rolls, and then I take them out of the sausage rolls, I'm like, right, here you go, here's some quiche, and they don't know what they're doing. You're still a blue belt. You haven't got a breadth of knowledge yet. Purple belts have a good game. Like they like hog roast, with cranberry sausage rolls. They know what they like. But then you give them a bit of quiche and like, yeah, I do like quiche as well. And you're like, oh, okay, cool. You've tried everything on the buffet cart. This is interesting. That's a purple belt. Brown belt is someone who is a connoisseur of everything on the buffet cart. And what I would say is like a brown belt is essentially a black belt. Like they're very good at everything, they understand everything, but they're someone who hasn't got a legacy yet. And so they're someone who, because a black belt doesn't just come out of nowhere. Like everyone knows when someone gets given a black belt, everyone like, oh yeah, I know that guy, or that girl, or whatever. And what I would say is, you then need to think, right, what do you want to be known for? Do you want to be known as a competitor, as a coach? Are you good at seminars? Do you want your own gym? Whatever. And so at that point, it's trying to then build their legacy for them. Like think of from Fighting Fit, Naki. He's very good. He's a black belt. His understanding of jiu-jitsu is far beyond what I was when I was a black belt. So there's nothing that I can do really to help him. And so now it's getting to the point where I'm just like, right, what do you want to be known for? What do you want to be known in the competition world? Let's get you some competitions. Let's get you on some super fights. Right, you want to be doing some seminars? Right, I'm going to try and get you in front of some people and get you on some seminar circuits and just build up your coaching abilities. And that's where he is at now. So I can look at every single person and think, right, where on the string are you? On your string. And so I can look at someone and think, right, yeah, okay, you've got good defense and you're starting to play now. You're going to like, sky blue kind of colors. This is interesting, right? And when it comes to like giving out belts, I think sometimes it can be a case of, when someone deserves it, they're definitely that color. Like they're definitely in that philosophical moment. But then some people are like, they're maybe like in the powder blue kind of stage, and they're not really going down because they don't trust their own confidence. And you're like, no, you know what? I'm just going to push you along a little bit. I'm going to give you that blue. And then they become the belt you give them. They like hold themselves taller and stuff. And you're like, oh, okay, it serves two purposes. It's either as a
Have you seen that happen?
Yes. I know, I can feel in someone like, you are good, but you just don't trust that you're good yet. And then I give them that belt and they become that belt, and like they just hold themselves taller. They have that kind of like, they're higher up the pecking order, and they go, yeah, I am this. And they start just being better at jiu-jitsu. You're like, that's so strange. It wasn't for recognition. It was to like validate that I think you are good when you don't think that yourself.
So what's your legacy from, you talked about becoming a black belt. It's when you've built a legacy for yourself.
So I was quite fortunate as a brown belt. So I met, so there's these camps called Globetrotter camps, and they were started by a guy called Christian Graugart, a Danish black belt. Essentially, it's a way of independent gyms. Part of the problem with jiu-jitsu is still quite a lot of tribalism. I know I'm going off on a bit of a tangent.
No.
So back before the days of YouTube and VHS and everything like that, like gyms would be very competitive, like especially in Brazil. And so to kind of keep the gym secrets, you wouldn't fraternize with the enemy. And so you go to competition, you do like, the gym technique, and you'd win with that technique in competition. And so if you were to someone who traveled around different gyms, you were called a créanche, like a traitor, because you go and basically give away your gym secrets to different gyms or go steal secrets and stuff like that. And traveling around was frowned upon. And that kind of hung over, like, if you're from like a Gracie Barra gym, you couldn't walk into a Carlson's. You'd end up in a parking lot bleeding.
I never knew this.
It was very tribal. Like, so you have these affiliations. It's one of the reasons why jiu-jitsu can't become an Olympic sport. Is because it's still very tribal in those kind of like bigger team names. So like you have Gracie Barra, you have Carlson Gracie, you have Checkmat, and you have ATOS, and all these different organizations. And so when you go to compete at a competition, you don't represent your country, you represent the team.
Okay.
And the main organization that runs jiu-jitsu competitions, like the most prestigious ones, is called the IBJJF, the International Brazilian Jujitsu Federation. It's owned by the same guys, to my knowledge, that run Gracie Barra. So that's like Manchester United owning the FA.
Okay.
Like,
so huge conflict of interest.
Conflict of interest. And it kind of then suits them to not have this. They have the World Championships, but when you go to the World Championships, you don't represent the United Kingdom, you don't represent Norway, you represent Gracie Barra, you represent Checkmat.
Wait, so the ADCC, is that part of...
That's something entirely different.
Okay.
I'll mention that in a sec. So the IBJJF, who run these biggest annual competitions like the Worlds, you represent your team. Like, so you'd have, say, Fighting Fit Stafford, but Fighting Fit Stafford would be under the bigger affiliation of Checkmat or something. But you'd represent Checkmat, like the organization. You actually have that. You'd actually have your on the registration. You'd have your gym, but then the bigger team. And you can't enter without being part of a bigger team. And so part of being an Olympic sport is you have to have non-profit bodies running the sport.
Okay.
And running it in a way that you have a world championship where you represent your country. But you have a for-profit organization called the IBJJF running it in a way that you represent your team, not your country. So we can't be an Olympic sport. As sad as it is, I'd love to see it. I'd love to see us, get bigger as a sport. We're blocked. ADCC that you just mentioned is called the Abu Dhabi Combat Club, and so some sheikhs, princes from Abu Dhabi went to California for university in the early 90s, met some the Gracies. Oh my God, this sport's cool. We're going to put some money into it. And so they started this ADCC, the Abu Dhabi Combat Club, as a competition of just loads of different grappling styles, so sambo, wrestling, bit more open rule set, and just do and the winners got 40 grand out of each division, and so they run it like almost like an Olympics every 2 years, like across the world. But it's the same thing again, like it's a for-profit kind of organization where it's just winners get 40k out of their brackets. But yeah, so you have this tribalism when it comes to the sport, and it's got a lot better these days because YouTube, you don't really have gym secrets anymore. Like, if you have a technique, everyone knows that technique because everyone at a competition's got a phone. Like, there's nothing hidden anymore. We still have a level of tribalism. Like, some gyms you cannot walk into if you're wearing like another gym's colors. It's like a no. And Christian, the guy who started Globetrotters, basically did a round the world trip in 2009, 2010. I remember him going on it. I remember the legends of this guy. And there were gyms that were like that. Like, you're part of this organization, you're not allowed in. Sorry. So he spent a lot of time at independent gyms. Like, people just didn't give a shit. And when he came back, he thought, I want to start an affiliation for those gyms that just don't care. Like, we're adults. What the hell are we being tribal for? I met him beginning of 2013 as a white belt, and he talked about this idea. I was like, look, we're an independent gym. I'm on board. And then he made it official, and then he said, well, why don't we all get together at my gym in Copenhagen and train as a camp? Well, that sounds cool. So I went to Copenhagen late 2013, and then became this huge traveling circus where he goes around the world, invites a load of black belts, like 20 black belts, 200 people rock up at the gym, and we train for like 10 hours a day for 6 days, and it's just a massive party. which is kind of cool. And that's where a lot of this traveling comes from. So I got my belts through him. And when I got my brown belt, he gave me a shot and said, look, you're not a black belt, but I've known you for years. Why don't you just teach one class at this camp? And it went down well. It went down really well. And then I got my black belt through Preet. It's an Estonian fellow who I met for the Globetrotters camps. And Christian said, look, you're a black belt. You've already done a couple of classes. Why don't you teach at this class in Estonia? And so it was essentially through Christian giving me a shot on camps that I then managed to get different seminars and build my legacy as a coach. And that's how I did competitions and stuff. Like I managed to put myself in front of some different promoters. But it was essentially Christian just like, he didn't pay me or anything like that. It was like, here you go, just teach a class. And from that, I met people who went, oh, that's pretty good. Why don't you come do a seminar at my gym? Thank you. And it just grew and grew and grew and grew until eventually now I get invited around the world to do this. So that's how my legacy as a brown belt created my black belt.
And how fun is that, being able to travel around the world and teach classes?
It's insane. Like, I was a firefighter for 12 years and I expected to be a career firefighter till I was 60. Like, you start and you're told, here's your pension, put every month into your pension. In 35 years, you can have your pension. Cool. So this is me for the next 35 years then. I'm going to live and die in this job just so I can have a good pension and retire at 60 comfortably. But I was working 80 to 130 hours a week.
Fucking hell.
And that's no way to live. And so then, but I had no, I had no idea that jiu-jitsu could go anywhere. I was a white belt or a blue belt. And all of a sudden this thing happens. And all of a sudden I'm going around the world. I'm in Norway. I'm like, what the hell am I doing in Norway? Like, I'm not a spiritual person. I'm not a religious person, but I can have spiritual moments. And there are times I'm sitting there in random countries. Like I'd be sitting in Savannah, Georgia, having pizza somewhere. I'm just like, how the hell am I here? Like, in what universe would I ever be in Savannah, Georgia? In what universe would I be in Rapid City, South Dakota? It's got a massive Native American population. Talking with a bunch of guys on, their guns and stuff like that, having burgers. I'm like, what have I done that allows me to be here and experience this? Like, the funnest places I ever go to are the places I didn't want to go to. Like, I wanted to go to New York as a kid because it's New York. New York's okay. But then you go to Rapid City and there's nothing there. But it's old Wild West. Like, there's parts of it which are like proper old Wild West, like saloons. I'm like, this is the coolest goddamn place ever. I'm in a goddamn saloon in the middle of the Midwest. Jiu-Jitsu got me here. This is so cool.
Is that the most fun place you've been?
No, I everything but again, one part of the benefit of jiu-jitsu is that you make these great friends. And if you go somewhere as a tourist, you maybe look at TripAdvisor and try this out. But you go somewhere as and you've got locals who are your friends. They go, no, this is where the good shit is. And you go to the good shit. You do the local thing. It was one of the things, unless it's heavily illegal or going to cause me great harm, I try never to say no when I'm traveling. Someone says, try this, okay. As long as it's not something's going to fuck me up. But it's food or an experience and do this. It's the good local stuff. Okay, cool. I'm like, oh my God, that is awesome. Try not to be closed-minded on it. I remember being in Israel, in Tel Aviv, and the gym owner from Octopus, Shaul, his brother owned a surf shop. I'd never been surfing. And they were like, we'll go out for some grill and then we'll go surfing. I'm like, cool, okay. Never done it, but sure. There's a lot of jellyfish though. Do you think it's okay? Yeah, cool. I'm in then. And there was a lot of jellyfish.
Did he get stung?
Hundreds of times. I had a wetsuit on, but there were so many jellyfish in the water, just the water itself burnt because of the amount of errant stingers in the sea. And then you'd hit one of these things, and they're everywhere. And in a room like this, you're looking at maybe you'd hit probably 30 to 40 jellyfish in this kind of space. It was a swarm, and I'm surfing over the top of them. I'm just getting, you fall off your surfboard, you're getting stung a lot. But they said, let's do it. So I was like, cool, let's do it. And I had a great time. And so, again, but I never thought of going to Israel or Tel Aviv. Never in my life thought I'd be there. And here I am surfing. Like, that's the cool thing about this jiu-jitsu journey. And that's why I left the fire service, because I'm like, I want to do this. Like, I would hate myself if I got to 60 and thought I could have spent the prime of my life traveling the world doing cool stuff. Seems a bit stupid to be sitting in a fire station in Stafford for that time. Kind of sad, really.
What country has produced probably the best fighters as far as BJJ is concerned? Because I've heard that the Scandinavian countries have some absolutely ruthless people come out.
I think Brazil's always had the most by volume of good athletes, because these guys, it's a national sport. They've been doing it since birth, practically.
Yeah.
America has a lot. Like, you think, you have like a massive wrestling culture. So, you've got kids, high school, college, wrestling, and then they, go into sports, and they've got a big sports culture. UK, not so much. Europe, maybe not so much as well.
Okay.
Scandinavia, you got like some out of Norway and Sweden and stuff. But the sport, you think up until early 2000, even seeing a blue belt in the UK was rare. Like, if you heard there was a blue belt in the area, you'd go find that blue belt. Like, that's how rare they were. Like, purple belts, legendary. Brown belts are only things you'd see in seminars. And that was early 2000s. Even when I started, like, there wasn't any black belts within like a 30, 40 mile radius of Stafford. Like, you had to travel to see a black belt. Now there's 4, 5 in Stafford alone in the space of since 2009. And so you think, when it comes to getting bigger as a sport, we're still in infancy in this country. Like, they've had Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu in Brazil for 100 years. Like, they have red belts. A red belt is someone, if you got your black belt at 19, I don't think you can get a red belt till you're 63. And Brazil have red belts, which means that there's been guys who've been training from the age of 5, got their black belt at 19, which is the earliest age you can get a black belt, and then carried on training. And now they're in their 60s, 70s, and they're getting their red belt.
Is that just a belt after you get after you put the time in?
Yeah. So it's just like, it's time served. After black, it's just time served. Like, I got my first degree on my black after 3 years, which is, and then 3 years I get my second degree and stuff like that. And red belt is just a belt. You get a coral belt, I think 5th or 6th dan, and then red belt you get a 9th, but you'd have to be in your 60s, which is insane that there's guys out there who've been doing this sport for already 50, 60 years of their life. That's bonkers to me. We're not there. And it was actually quite interesting, is that, maybe it's a more political rant now, is in this country, the preserve of interesting sports and music and art is only ever found in private schools. Like, majority of musicians are private school based, bands and stuff. Like, it's because in state schools you don't have, you're taught to be a worker.
Yeah,
that's the majority of it. But there's enrichment in private schools, art, music, learn those things. Like, I used to teach Japanese jiu-jitsu in private schools, like, because they could actually bring me in. State schools, no, because that's not what we're after. We're after just people who are going to pass their exams, go and join the workforce. In public school and paid, fee-paying school, no, there's enrichment. Like, I live next to a private school, and they go up for like climbing and stuff like that. And you think, climbing in a school in England, insane. Like, never happen. Football or rugby or hockey, that's your lot. But rock climbing and I remember, I went to one in Litchfield and the guy was teaching judo. You think, judo in a school in the UK. Never. But unfortunately, if you go to a state school, you're going to have the keyboard and the recorder, and that's about it.
Is that a funding issue? Or is that just a political thing where we need more people for the workforce because we've got an aging population that needs looking after?
But you can have both. I think it's a political will more than anything else. It's poor people are there to enter the workforce. People who are rich, they can still do their classes and stuff, but they can also have time to learn more interesting things. I mean, you can definitely put the funding into it. The only time you ever see people who are, given the ability to learn these more enriching subjects, are usually their parents put them through it. Like, if you've got a parent who buys you a guitar or puts you in guitar lessons and stuff, then you're going to learn these things. But it's not something you get from school. Yet, the private school I'm at, I'm pretty sure every kid is kind of like given the opportunity to learn an instrument. What do you want to learn? And I think, never see that in a state school.
Yeah, I don't think I ever got the opportunity either.
It's kind of sad. It's like, because I've got two kids and I look at them thinking they're going to a regular UK state school, and I think, if I just left them to it, they would have none of that enrichment. But I take them rock climbing. I teach my daughter to play bass guitar because I think you're not going to get it otherwise. That she does keyboard at basic music, but that's not enrichment. That's kind of heartbreaking. And I think other countries, do enrichment better than we do. Like, looking at different sports and stuff. And so, the idea of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu being taught to young kids, and then having or even any sport like that, like wrestling. I mean, Americans do wrestling at college and high school. We invented the thing. Like, it comes from England. Lancashire catchers catch can, and British folk styles of wrestling. We exported it to America, and then they do it in school. It's one of our sports, and yet it's completely dead. Even professional wrestling, like WWE, comes from British catch wrestling. Yet we exported the idea of wrestling for money, and they made it better, and now they do it. Yet it's something we did over here. In the Emirates, from Abu Dhabi, I'm pretty sure that Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is taught in schools. It's one of the lessons you can take in school. Every kid can learn Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.
That's crazy.
It's amazing. And yet, here, we're a big boxing culture here. We love boxing. Never see it in a school. And people go, oh, it's health and safety and stuff like that. No, it's not. That's just to try and get us to fight amongst ourselves. It's a political will. Like, they set targets. You have to pass these English, maths, and science. That's it. Like, you're going to succeed in those, geography, history, and the language.
Yeah. I guess if you look at it from in a longer point of view as well, like if you look at it in a longer time scale, it probably would end up being better as well, because obviously the more physically active you are, the fitter you are, and the less likely that you end up having a heart attack at 50.
But just a happier society.
Yeah.
Essentially, you have a happier society that will automatically fix so many issues. Like, when you have something to be enriched about, and not just, and that's it was funny going back into the word of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. So there's another sport that runs alongside it called luta livre, which is the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Gracie Jiu-Jitsu was the preserve of middle class people, because you had to be able to afford a gi. And so the predominantly people who did it in Brazil were middle class. They could afford it.
Okay, so the Gracie family, they weren't poor people. Or
Gracie Senior was a businessman. That's how he set up that original gym with the Maeda. So it was a preserve of middle class kids. You had to come in. You had to afford a gi, which you think mid 40s, 50s Brazil, getting a gi there. Come on. At the same time, in the favelas, you had poor kids doing a sport called luta livre, which is essentially no-gi jiu-jitsu. It was a style. It was influenced by British catch wrestling, and it included leg locks. And then you'd have these competitions between the middle-class Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, Gracie Jiu-Jitsu kids, and the poor luta livre kids who were doing no-gi. And anytime the luta livre kids would win, it was usually with leg locks. And that's then that created the stigma on leg locks. Like, usually in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, they're banned. You can't do leg locks because they're too dangerous or something. It was essentially, and they were called like the poor kid's technique, the poor man's technique. It was because it was done by poor kids. It's actually classism, which is insane.
That's crazy. I'd never thought you'd find that in a sport like Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.
Which is actually why, like, I remember when I first started, you found more no-gi up north because the north was more mining societies, and that's where catch wrestling was predominantly, as in you'd come out the mines and you'd have a scrap in the field. Yet the cities and richer areas were places where you'd find more judo, more martial arts, more Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu because people could afford gis and stuff. So the North had more of a no-gi culture when I first started. It still kind of does, which is really interesting because there's still a classism here. It's a lot easier now because gis are cheaper and more plentiful. But historically, no. Like, it was just, you'd have guys in PE shorts and tank tops, and that was it.
That's actually quite crazy. I've never even heard of that until you just said it.
It's fascinating to me that it's very pervasive, this idea. And then you can liken that to schools. Like, giving a bunch of kids a football to run around with is a lot easier than getting someone who specializes in a martial art or whatever to come in and teach, or even specialize in teaching guitar, to teach a guitar class and buying guitars for kids and stuff like that. Buy them a recorder. They'll be happy then.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. I mean, like, going back to you talking about how, like, just we can become like a happier society, right? I remember, like, once I started doing this, I've been trying to get my friends into it as well, and I still remember just coming into like session one day, came in like miserable because it just wasn't a good day, and I came out just as a different person as I went in, and it is crazy how something like that can just change your like whole day.
Yeah, and it's definitely up to the environment. Like, it's the environment. It's one thing that I try and make sure of is I want it to be like a night out. You come in and you leave happier. Like, you are here. You're here of your own volition. And if I'm making you sad, then you ain't staying. I want you to come in and I want you to leave feeling good about yourself. So how do I do that? And that could be anything. That could be the music. Usually if I put music on, it's 80s because 80s was fantastic. I don't listen to 80s in my personal time. Hell no. But it's great rolling music. Like, I don't want to just put on like, some house music or stuff like that, average kind of gym workout music. No, it's a party. Like, we're doing something. We're dressing in lycra and cuddling each other on the floor. Like, I realize how done that is in itself. So let's just really lean in on it. And let's have everyone walking out going, that was a good night. It was a good workout. There's sweat everywhere. I'm a bit broken, but I had fun. Almost like started dancing. Like, you see people just like, when you're rolling, just singing along to the tracks, and you think, because everyone knows them, like, Billie Jean comes on and everyone's like getting into it. And you think that's awesome, and everyone leaves really happy. And Jiu-Jitsu itself is obviously a very fun sport. Like I said, it's a social club. It's and I love the idea that everyone just sits around and chats as well. And it's a social environment, and that's what makes people happy. And it's kind of sad again, like it can be blocked off from everyone. I'd hate that idea.
Yeah. What kind of role has someone like Gordon Ryan played in making Jiu-Jitsu more, well, I don't want to say popular, but more well known?
He hasn't made it well known. Like, not for a casual audience. Like, in the sport, yeah, he's big fish. But outside the sport, who the hell is he? Like, you could tell me names out of different sports, like golfers and stuff. I'm like, I don't really care about golf. He is a big fish in the golfing pond. He's not a big fish. And Tiger Woods has never made me want to play golf. I know who Tiger Woods is. I know what golf is. Doesn't make me want to play golf. And I think Gordon Ryan is just a voice in the jiu-jitsu community. Same with a lot of them. And same with Conor to an extent. You know, I don't think there's many people that wouldn't have taken up MMA. People who wouldn't have taken up MMA who did because of Conor.
Yeah.
Like, if you're going to take up MMA, you're going to take it up with or without Conor. And maybe he puts more eyes on it, but it doesn't help the sport grow. Same with Gordon. He's very good. Obviously, he's a fantastic athlete. He's probably one of the best we've had. Very smart guy as well. He's antagonistic, and it gets his brand out in the jiu-jitsu world as well, which helps. Like, if you're quiet, no one's going to talk about you. If you're there, like, saying the things he does, people are going to talk about you, like we are now.
Yeah. So, is that what's needed for the sport to become well known? Like, you just need someone who, well, I don't want to say public enemy, but is antagonistic on, well, I guess, social media now.
I think it's the growth of jiu-jitsu is always going to be organic. Like, I don't think you need a really big name. Like, there's plenty of celebrities that do it. Tom Hardy does it. Ashton Kutcher, Keanu Reeves. You know, it's one of the big in sports in like Hollywood or whatever. You know, Guy Ritchie, like the director, has been doing it for over 20 years. Like, he was one of the first in the UK to exactly. But how much has he brought eyes onto jiu-jitsu? He hasn't. Which makes you think at some point then Madonna's probably done jiu-jitsu. Like, and so it doesn't like, but this sport has just naturally grown. The internet, I think, will do more for it, because it will just, like, people like yourself, like myself, will just randomly click on it and go, what the hell is this? And we'll go try it out. And then you have more black belts in areas. It's availability, scarcity. Like, when I started, there wasn't jiu-jitsu near here. It was submission wrestling. And now there's 4 or 5 jiu-jitsu gyms, you know, around the corner. And it's that's what's going to grow the sport. It's awareness for the internet and availability. Like, you know, same as McDonald's. Like, if there's no McDonald's near your house, you ain't trying McDonald's. You might know what McDonald's is. You still ain't having McDonald's.
Yeah, I'd never thought of that, but I guess probably in a greater way as well, organic growth will always be more sustainable than something growing because of just one person being...
Yeah. I think it's a boom and it's a fad and it will die off. Like, I'm aware of that. Like, karate, kung fu, they all had their moments in the sun. Krav Maga or whatever. And it will hit a flood. It'll be everywhere. And then it will just quietly go away. And then, again, like, you know, going from even the space of 12 years to having 0 jiu-jitsu gyms in Stafford to 5, that's growth. Like, at what point do we stop? Because those people are going to split off and they're going to start their own gyms, and then you have 8 jiu-jitsu gyms, whatever. And there's only so many people to go around. There's not a groundswell of people wanting to join jiu-jitsu. And the numbers are never going to grow.
Do you really think it will die off?
Not die off, but it won't be as well. It won't be as big as it is becoming. It'll get to a point, and then it'll saturate, and then it'll. I mean, there's karate. I mean, Taekwondo. There's still gyms around.
Yeah,
but they've died off.
Yeah, but I think maybe with karate, I could be completely wrong, but it's not as legit as something.
MMA's shown a lot of sports for what they are, but even then, MMA started 30 years ago. Taekwondo still exists. Aikido still exists. So, as many times as you think you can get rid of these things, you can't. We've known what works for 30 years. Yet, internet warriors will come out and say, yeah, but it wouldn't work in the streets, though, because you have rules in MMA. Like, I'm pretty sure if you put John Jones in front of someone, I'd put my money on him winning most fights.
It's a fair point. I'd never thought of that. Like, it will just reach a saturation point and then just taper off eventually.
Yeah, something new will start. Something new will always come around. We just don't know what that is yet. Climate change. That's what's going to stop us.
Have you got any thoughts on what that could be? Is there any kind of new martial art that's being developed, or
not on my radar necessarily? I think we're still in the Jiu-Jitsu phase, but you don't know what's coming around the corner. Maybe boxing's going to come back. Maybe Muay Thai. Muay Thai hasn't had a massive moment yet. Maybe that would be it.
Yeah. I didn't know that there was quite a famous like Muay Thai gym. Well, Muay Thai kickboxing gym like just around the corner from here. John Steele's gym.
Yeah, John Steele.
Yeah. That was like a shocking revelation to me.
Again, I think Thai boxing hasn't had that big saturation moment. Maybe that'll be it. Maybe it's something else entirely. Maybe just MMA. Like MMA itself isn't a mixed martial art anymore. It's become its own martial art. Like you go and learn MMA. You don't learn boxing. You don't learn jiu-jitsu and wrestling and mix it all together. You learn the art of MMA now. I think that's going to be more pervasive.
Right. What kind of a role does wrestling have in a sport like MMA?
Wrestling is the decider. As in...
because, the way I've kind of seen it in matches is wrestling is how you take someone to the ground, and then BJJ becomes how you kind of keep them on the ground and, well, finish them off. Or is that right?
Wrestling is the one that decides where the fight's going to happen. Like, if you're a wrestler and you want to hit someone, they ain't taking you down. Like, John Jones is a fantastic wrestler, but he doesn't take people down. He chooses, I want to keep this fight standing. And then you've got other wrestlers who go, no, actually, I want to take you to the ground. I'm just going to smother you, GSP style. And I think wrestling is the crux of everything. As in, they are the ones that decide. If you are a fantastic striker, but you have no wrestling, you ain't getting your striking game today. If you are a fantastic jiu-jitsu expert, Damian Maia versus Tyron Woodley, but you can't get the fight to the ground, sorry, you're getting punched today. Wrestling is the decider. Like, and jiu-jitsu isn't necessarily a good sport, good art for holding people down. Wrestling is a good art for holding people down, because jiu-jitsu people stay on the floor.
Okay.
Wrestlers try and get back to their feet. That's the art of wrestling is not landing on your back.
Is that why Crone Gracie never kind of took off in UFC?
Yeah, because he wasn't. He obviously had good wrestling for jiu-jitsu, but not good. Like you have collegiate wrestlers. Cain Velasquez's of the world who've been wrestling since they were like born. Those kind of people are always going to have a massive advantage. I think it's something like 70% of all UFC champions were predominantly grapplers.
Wow. Okay. So do you think, like you were talking about before, Izzy and Pereira, when their next match, well, whenever their rematches, do you think wrestling will become a decider? Because we saw Izzy kind of use a bit of wrestling and jiu-jitsu as well to try and get him.
Wrestling's always going to be the decider. If you have just two strikers, then yeah, they're just going to stand and bang. But if you have someone if there's a stylistic mismatch, the wrestling will decide. I think that's the thing. Between two strikers or between two whatever's, equal styles, their styles will fight. But against mismatched styles, wrestling decides. Whoever's got the better wrestling, that's where the fight's happening. I mean, there's always lucky punches and lucky subs, but in a protracted war, wrestling decides it.
Interesting. That's something I never kind of like really thought of as much.
It's pretty much how this whole sport came about. You think Brazilian Jujitsu came in and was wiping the floor for everyone in a quite literal sense. And then what shut it down is people not letting them go to the floor again. Like, actually, no. My wrestling says we ain't going back down to the ground. What are you going to do now? I'm going to hit you.
Is that one of the reasons why you've started incorporating more wrestling into the training now?
I think...
into the classes.
Not necessarily. I think it's the fact that simply jiu-jitsu is a philosophy, not an art. It's an idea. How do I take you down, control you, and submit you? What if it fits within that philosophy? Anything goes. And so, because it's a philosophy, it's not stagnant. It's not set in its ways of like, this is the curriculum, you stick to the curriculum. We adapt. And so we see holes and we go, right, actually, we need to get better at taking people down or standing back up again. We'll incorporate more wrestling. I mean, you look at the pie of grappling, the great big pie of grappling. All the different rule sets do is just take a sliver of that pie. Like judo used to incorporate double legs and ground fighting. I mean, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, I know I've been talking for a while. Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is... I've been talking. Oh, damn. Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is a... almost like a mistranslation. So when Kano left... when you had traditional Japanese Jiu-Jitsu in Japan, and it was predominantly of middle-class people who wanted to reenact the days of the samurai, and they'd just be in dojos punching the air and doing throws. And the guy called Jigoro Kano came around and went, you know what, I'm going to turn this into a sport. I'm going to take out some stuff which maybe caused a bit too many injuries, and we're going to turn this into a sport. And he called it Kano's Jiu-Jitsu. Then, this is to my knowledge, I might be incorrect, he sent his minions out into the world to spread the good word of Kano's Jiu-Jitsu, and one of them ended up, after some traveling around England and various other places, in Brazil. And so he met a guy called, Mr. Gracie, who opened up a school with him, and they taught this Jiu-Jitsu. Back in Japan, Mr. Kano renamed his Kano's Jiu-Jitsu to Judo. That was the sport. But obviously that translation never reached Brazil.
Okay.
So what we actually do is Brazilian Judo. It's not Jiu-Jitsu. It's actually a form of Judo. It's original Judo. But the reason it looks so different to Judo is because over the years, Judo got mangled from different martial arts and went, we're going to change the rules. And so they used to be able to double leg and single leg, like wrestlers in Judo. But then a load of wrestlers put on gis and were murdering them. So they went, nope, can't touch the legs anymore, can only control the upper body. And then loads of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu guys were messing them up on the floor with submissions. And they went, no, we're going to make it so you can only do 15 seconds on the floor. And so literally they just make their sliver of the pie smaller and smaller. And so all the different styles of grappling are just rule sets on this pie, and that's what dictates the different arts. Like if you were to completely remove the rules and just grapple, that would be the biggest sliver of the pie. But the second you start taking the parts out, you can't submit each other, you have wrestling. You can't touch the legs, and you can maybe submit each other a little bit, you have judo. You put on a gi, now you have judo and stuff like that. You take off the gi, you have wrestling. But and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is just the most free version of the rules.
Okay.
It's the biggest cut of the pie. And so whenever we look at that massive cut, we then go, right, we want to focus on that slice of the pie that we incorporate. Who've been specializing in it? Well, the guys who do a lot of throwing are the judo guys. We'll go talk to them for a bit. The guys who do a lot of slamming people on their heads, the wrestlers, we'll go talk to them for a bit. Because it all forms part of our cut of the pie. They are within our cut of the pie. And the less rules we have, the more the pie we have.
Okay. That's something I'd actually never, again, I do want to kind of get into the history of, learn a bit more about the history of it. You got any books you'd recommend?
No, I don't. Just general, research it, man. It sounds like a Joe Rogan podcast already. No, just general things I've picked up over the years. It's kind of created my awareness of this sport. Because I do have a belt in luta livre as well, so I know the luta livre side and know the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu aspect of it, why leg locks, and it's just years of being within this sport. It's just made me aware.
Okay.
But I'm sure you can find some information out there.
All right. Wrap up in a bit.
That's perfect.
Just one more question. What makes someone a good coach?
So this is interesting. I didn't know what you have ideas of what coaching means. You think of football and stuff like that. But I thought, I need to get better. I want to become a better coach. So I read books, and there's one that really changed everything. And do you know the history of the word coach? Why we call it a coach and not a teacher or a professor or whatever?
No.
Is there was a Hungarian village in the 14th century that made wagons drawn by horses. And those wagons were very respected and purchased, and it was from a village called Coach. So they're called coaches. And so that's why you think of a big bus that carries people around. It's a coach based on this Hungarian village from the Middle Ages. And I was like, okay, well, how's that relate to the word coach? It probably just doesn't, but I like the way it kind of can be explained, because it then helps me become a better coach. As a coach is something that gets someone where they want to be when they cannot get there themselves. Compared to a teacher, who just is someone who explains something to you, or a professor or something like that. A coach is someone who gets you where you want to be, where you cannot get there yourself. That's what a coach does in a physical sense, as in that you think of the bus. It gets you where you want to be because you cannot get there yourself. And so that's something I kind of keep in my head at all times when I'm coaching someone, is I look at you and think, why are you here? Where do you actually want to be? My job is to get you there in whatever way I can facilitate that. Be it technically, be it through inspiration or motivation, be it just dragging your ass out of bed and making you come to class, be it putting you in front of the right people and giving you the right opportunities. That's not just a teacher then. A teacher is someone who's explaining a subject to you. A coach is someone who's trying to get you somewhere. And I think if you have that idea in your head constantly whenever you meet someone new, and whenever you want to help someone, like, you want to be somewhere, I'm going to try and help you get somewhere. That is coaching.
It's quite beautiful.
I hope so. Like, I have it on the inside of my Jiu-Jitsu front page of my like little Jiu-Jitsu diary of like ideas and where people are at and stuff. That's on the front page, just to remind myself all the time. You're helping people get to where they want to be because they cannot get there themselves, and you have opportunities that they may not have to do this.
Oh, that's great. Thank you. Thank you for coming down.
No, it was my pleasure. Absolutely my pleasure.
Hopefully you can do this again sometime.
Yeah, I'd love to. Obviously, I can talk for hours.
No, it's great. Is there anything that you want to kind of say before signing off?
No. Thank you for having me. That was a lot of fun. If anyone that wants to come down and try Jiu-Jitsu, we are quite friendly in a way. And if you type my name into YouTube, Google, whatever, you'll find plenty of information about me dotted around all over the place.
All right, brilliant. Thanks for listening, guys.
Cheers. Thank you.